To start with, the Indian aquaculture has achieved a lot, and aquaculture has brought prosperity to many regions within the country. And high export focus has helped the country in macroeconomic terms as well. We have many reasons to be proud of our path till date. However, there is still a lot left to be desired. India is the second largest seafood exporter at about $7 billion, but we are a distant second to the first, which China, that is at about $45 billion. While we are an important player in the international arena, our domestic markets are yet to support the large scale consumption. While aquaculture is such a large enterprise and employs a huge amount of people, formal finance institutions have largely stayed away from this space. Farmers are still taking a lot of risks when they pursue aquaculture farming. We at Aquaconnect strongly believe that technology is the answer to systemically address most of these issues. I will now invite our esteemed panelists one by one to discuss the topic emerging technologies in Indian aquaculture sector and how startups are charting a new path on technology adoption. Uh, Mark, I would request you to go first on this to share your thoughts.
Certainly.
Yeah.
We've been very active in this space as Omnivore since 2011. 2011 was a very different world from the one we exist in today. Smartphones were practically non-existent. Um, Farmers had at best a feature phone, if anything at all. 4G wasn't here, and connectivity was poor. And yet, Omnivore was still trying to identify entrepreneurs and new technologies that, for those days, were making a meaningful change in the way the agricultural sector operated. It's been a sort of an amazing decade, frankly. If you look at the sort of things that we backed once upon a time, much of it was hardware. Most of the business models were B2B. And a farmer platform like Aquaconnect was unthinkable because, frankly, there just wasn't the connectivity. There wasn't the ability to individually reach farmers and solve problems for them in inputs, in market linkage, in finance, and in advisory, the four pillars of farmer platforms. I think what's broadly interesting right now is that, in the last few years, agritech has gone from being, and I'm not just speaking about as it relates to Indian aquaculture, though I think Indian aquaculture is more of a vanguard than other sectors because of the prosperity of shrimp farmers in India. But across the entire agricultural ecosystem, across the 13 crore farmers of India, and not just the 1.3 lakh shrimp farmers in India, there is a noticeable movement in the last few years away from traditional, informal, analog markets and towards next generation formal and digital markets. And that's the biggest shift that we see underway right now. And the interesting thing about COVID has been that while COVID is a terrible, terrible human tragedy and incredibly disruptive to our economy and has clearly hurt the shrimp sector to some extent. I think it will recover, but it's slightly difficult times. I think it has created a disruption throughout the entire agricultural ecosystem, where farmers that previously relied upon, frankly, a many decade-old status quo, okay, that they would get inputs from a local dealer, that they would sell to a local trader, that they would borrow from a local money lender, right? That they would get advice probably from the input dealer itself. COVID has blown apart that status quo. The lockdown prevented shops from opening. The lockdown prevented people coming to the farm, going from the farm. And again, I'm speaking across the entire agricultural value chain. And I think for our space, the space of agritech, including aquaculture, it has been interesting to see everything change very, very, very quickly, right? So, it's been similar in other spaces, right? E-commerce grew steadily, solidly for 2 decades. Food delivery grew steadily, solidly, especially over the last decade. Work from home was, a trend. Many of us have friends and colleagues that worked from home, maybe Mondays, maybe Fridays. COVID took all these things and pushed down on the pedal as hard as it could and made it a new reality. And so I think what's interesting in our agricultural ecosystem and in aquaculture is that this shift to digital, this shift to formal, this shift away from old, local, informal partnerships and towards platforms like Aquaconnect in aquaculture, like Dehat in agriculture. We've made a number of investments in this space, right? Has really accelerated because farmers don't have their old options anymore, right? They know they need help with market linkage and the local trader is simply not buying. They know they need better inputs and input supply is erratic. They know they need finance and finance is staggeringly expensive and frankly in aquaculture, as Raj correctly pointed out, completely unavailable, right? It's all embedded finance. It's all very expensive dealer credit, right? As opposed to formal finance. And so I think these are interesting and exciting times. You can look at the challenge that we have in the Indian aquaculture sector and say, oh, it's going to be very difficult, right? Farmers are not stocking at such high levels and overseas markets for shrimp are not great. And, what's going to happen? Or you can take another look at it and say, this is a great opportunity for a company like Aquaconnect. This is a great opportunity for someone to step into the void that is being created by this shift and help carry farmers through this difficult time period where everything they've ever known, all of the certainties they used to be able to bank on, have all been shaken in some way, shape, or form. And if we can combine this platform with the right sort of AI, the right sort of mobile, accessible software, the right kind of marketplace for inputs, market linkages like Aqua Bazaar, right? The work on finance that is happening with Aquacred, right? All the things that are coming out of Aquaconnect over the course of the next few months. I think we have a chance to become the hero of this story, the hero of this sector, and to really help the Indian shrimp sector back onto its feet and into new levels of strength. And it's not just shrimp, right? It should also be across fish. It should be across IMCs. It should be across Pangasius. It should be across tilapia, which has never realized its potential, right? It should be domestic. It should be export, right? This is a kind of farming, right? A sustainable, environmentally intelligent kind of farming that is critical for the world. It's critical for India. And if we can help accelerate this sector at the time, at precisely the moment where the large traditional players, the feed millers, are on their knees, right? The exporters are on their knees, right? If we can step into that void and really provide that support, then I think Aquaconnect will have an incredible future ahead of it. And at Omnivore, we're very proud to be part of that future. We started engaging with Raj long before we ever invested. Remember the first time I think I ever met him in person was, Raj, it was at Kalari, right? I think it was at a conference at Kalari, and Raj pitched me, and I was like, that's a terrible idea. But like many good entrepreneurs, he persisted. He worked on what he was thinking about doing. He evolved his business plan. And I think we saw incredible passion and incredible vision. And that's why we backed Aquaconnect. And that's why we will continue to back Aquaconnect. He is doing very, very important work. So anyway, with that, I will kick off to other panelists that can add much more nuance, much more knowledge, and much more intelligence about aquaculture in India. It's an honor to be here and very proud of all of the work that Aquaconnect is doing.
Thanks, Mark. That was very comprehensive.